High-Speed Rail Authority officials are confident in what the next year will bring in California, but the construction, it continues in the Central Valley.
Ultimately, if you talk about the entirety of the project from San Francisco to LA, it's probably the tunneling segment.
Imagine living in California and facing difficulty reaching your cousin's hometown in Los Angeles due to time consumption. Moreover, you cannot afford a flight. Soon you heard the Railway Authority would build a high-speed railway and you got excited. In 2008, California signed a $9 billion project to build the world's first high-speed railway, and the plan was to construct an electric train that would connect Los Angeles with the Central Valley and then San Francisco in 2 hours and 40 minutes. But even after 15 years, there was no sign of a single mile of track laid, and the executive said there was no money to finish the project. Moreover, according to the latest updates from the California Central High-Speed Railway Authority, the project would cost around $88 to $128 billion to complete the system from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Furthermore, the CEO of the California High-Speed Railway Authority, Brian Kelly, said that so far $9.8 billion had been spent, and now they have a funding gap. The earlier they could finish the project, the cheaper the project would have been. The Secretary of California's State Transportation System, Tox Omishakin, said that one of the biggest hurdles is funding, and they can't do the project without federal support, and he thinks it will not happen. However, the bipartisan infrastructure bill of 2021 allocated $66 billion for rail, but much of that will go on Amtrak, and the money is not specifically set aside for California high-speed rail. She also added that Biden is a railroad person and that he is an advocate for railroads. Despite the funding challenges, the project is in progress with 119 miles under construction and recently celebrated its 10,000th worker on the job. Moreover, the infrastructure work is completed and 422 out of the 500 miles have been environmentally cleared. Furthermore, she said as they finish the environmental clearing process, the cost is around $1.3 billion, and that's for no steel or cement in the ground. However, some people are calling to reform the National Environmental Policy Act to expedite infrastructure projects that would positively impact the environment. Moreover, Rep. Seth Moulton, DMAS, said the act would help us think hard about building a 14-lane highway. Furthermore, she added that it is difficult to build a lane in America, which would be good for the environment, and that's where they need to reform. The most expensive part of the project is to build tunnels that will be required outside of Los Angeles. Hence, the construction started in the middle of 2015, since it is a cheaper section to build. Kelly added that they got off to a rough start and got into construction before they were ready, and as they're moving forward, they'll be getting the chronology and sequencing of the right work, and added that she was very confident about the project's future. Moreover, the Rail Authority said that the goal is to have the section between Bakersfield and Merced operational between 2030 and 2033. For a country that was built on the railroad, the now years and old saga of the Californian high-speed rail continues to be ethereal, depressing, and at the same time amusing for Americans. Now, let's look at the timeline of the most noteworthy moments. In 1996, the first high-speed rail link in California was mooted, and the state governor, Pete Wilson, established the California High-Speed Rail Authority, intending to develop a proposal to present to him and state legislators before giving Californians a public vote. Moreover, a detailed study found that high-speed rail lines are economical, environmentally friendly, and socially profitable, and hence they should develop a proper strategic plan and project proposal. After completing a business plan, the CHSRA sought input from international counterparts and hired consultancy to review their project proposal. In August 2005, an implementation plan that the project would take 11 years to complete was finally approved, and it took 3 years before the elements of the proposal were put to voters. Proposition 1A, agreed upon by the state election in November 2008, approved the sale of $10 billion in bonds to fund the project. At the same time, the network was penned to be completed by 2020 by connecting Los Angeles and San Francisco through a series of high-speed segments, allowing us to see trains traveling at 350 kilometers an hour. Moreover, the train will travel through Southern California, Sacramento, San Joaquin Valley, and San Francisco Bay. Furthermore, by January 2009, the optimism for the project was high and was boosted further by the inauguration of President Barack Obama. At the time, the economy was in a crisis, and Obama decided to fight back and committed to a national public spending plan which included 13,840 kilometers of high-speed track. By 2011-2012, tensions started to simmer over the plans for the infrastructure project and the damage it might do to the communities and wildlife. Moreover, the management and the project were criticized for some proposals they conveyed and bothered about how community concerns could be ignored. In July 2012, after a lengthy period of studies, environmental research and public consultation, a funding bill was generated that would provide financial support for the construction of 209 kilometers, and a green light was given to commence work on a 104.6 kilometer section by the US Federal Railroad Administration in September. By early 2013, a $1 billion construction contract that involved the first 46.6 kilometers between Madera and Fresno was signed. By then, commentary on the project becomes less favorable due to the perceived failure of the bidding process. However, in response to the negative comments, the CHSRA CEO wrote to the Los Angeles Times that they rejected the thesis and that their procurement process was open, competitive, and under the law. By August 2014, the second contract worth $71.86 billion for the design and construction oversight was signed and covers the initial operating section of the high-speed rail program, which extends 104 kilometers from the terminus of Construction Package 1 at the Eastern American of Fresno to 1.6 north of the Tulare-Kern County line. By January 2015, the ground was finally broken, with work commencing on the first part of the line in Fresno, which included a section of track stretching 273.6 kilometers and should be completed by 2028. In the same month, another contract was signed for a 96.5 kilometer section. A request was also made for the rolling stock, eliciting interest from numerous suppliers. From 2016 to 2017, the work continued at the project and finance levels. However, criticism of the project's opponents remained. In March 2018, CHSRA announced its first significant construction, with the foundation works for a bridge that will carry high-speed trains. In November 2018, an audit was done by the state, and the project management team was left with the regret of making flawed decisions and poor contract management, and hence left the project again with 15 years left to complete. State Republican Jim Pattison said that the project was dead in the water, and that there would never be a completed track from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, and the best we can hope for is a rump railroad running from Bakersfield to Madera. Moreover, by 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic began to impact, leading to an extension in the consultation process. The CHSRA CEO Brian said that the board of directors had approved the final supplemental environmental impact report, and in November, an American overpass in Fresno County was opened and became the fifth high-speed rail structure to be opened in the Central Valley. Furthermore, the CHSRA announced the employment milestone of creating 5,000 construction jobs in the Central Valley since the work began. By June 2021, after months of negotiations, CHSRA was able to secure the return of funding taken from it by President Trump's administration, and Newsom said that securing $929 million in the grant will continue to spur job creation, advance the project, and move the state one step closer to getting trains from California. Throughout the remaining year, the work advanced, and political figures threw their weight behind the project and won several architecture and sustainability awards. By 2022, the work was advanced and the federal money supported the initiative. However, criticism from some quarters persisted regarding delays, overspending, and environmental impacts. Moreover, the climate wasn't fair, and inflation added to more problems. CHSRA hopes to restart the project in 2023, citing inflationary pressures and supply chain issues. Will we be able to guess what will happen with the project? Even though we're not sure, we can hope the project will still take another step forward. Hope you all liked the video and enjoyed the content. If so, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, please do share your valuable thoughts in the comments. See you soon and have a great day.